All right, y'all, what's up, man? Good morning. June the 14th, 2025, Saturday. Welcome to the Podcast with Soul. Follow the Podcast with Soul on Spotify. Follow the Podcast with Soul on Instagram. Thank everybody for the super chats, the cash apps, the PayPals, all of that. Thank you. If you want to support the platform, you can do so below. My cash app and my PayPal link are below. Yesterday, June the 13th, 2025, Jonathan Perez, Puffy's assistant, that worked for Puff from December 2021 to September 2024 when Puffy was arrested. Now, he took the stand at 11:51 a.m. This was his direct examination, who was done by, I think, Mrs. Smyser, Assistant U.S. Attorney Smyser. I think that's who it was. Yeah, because she came back and did the redirect. So, this is another case of a Puffy assistant who doesn't want to be there, who doesn't want to cooperate against Puff, who doesn't want to testify against Puff, who was subpoenaed by the Southern District of New York, by the prosecution, and most likely threatened with an indictment and being charged if they didn't cooperate and testify against Puff. Now, Ms. Smyser, this is the second witness that has blown up in her face. I don't even know why she's still on the team. They need to bench her. You understand? She is the one, Assistant U.S. Attorney Smyser, who put Brianna Bogelin on the stand, who perjured herself on the stand and lied about the whole 17th floor balcony incident. That was her witness. Now she brings Jonathan Perez. And what Ms. Smyser tries to do, because she knows Brian Steele is going to do the cross-examination, and Brian Steele does a fantastic job, and we're going to get into his cross-examination too. She tries to be preemptive, right? And she asks Jonathan Perez. Jonathan Perez is 35 years old. He's from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He has a Bachelor of Science degree from some college. His work hours was from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. He had applied for a job to be Puffy's assistant some years back. He didn't get the job the first time. A position came open. KK called him, said, yo, you still want to work for Puff? Jonathan said, hell yeah. He came down. They sent him to Miami to shadow some of the other assistants and work with Puff for 1 week as a on-the-job test. He passed the test. They gave him the job. His salary was $85,000 a year to start. By the time he left in September 2024, when Puffy was arrested, his salary was $100,000. Now, what Ms. Smyser tries to do, and Ms. Smyser, you know what I'm saying? You have been getting crushed, destroyed, annihilated, every word possible. The prosecution team for the Southern District of New York is nowhere near on the level of Puffy's defense team. None of them. Now, Smyser, Maureen Comey, Johnson, Slavic, none of them. They look like trainees. They look like on-the-job trainees, beginners, compared to Mark Agnifilo, Alexandra Shapiro, Tenny Garagos, Brian Steele, Nicole Westmoreland, Jonathan Bach, Xavier Donaldson, Jason Driscoll, Estebeyo. They getting killed by these people. And that's why they gotta cheat. Ms. Smyser, knowing that Brian Steele is getting ready to do his cross-examination at the end of her direct examination, she asks Jonathan Perez, why did you leave? why did you leave Combs Enterprises? He says, when Puffy got arrested in September 2024, I was trying to call Puff. I was trying to reach out to Puff. I was trying to reach out to KK. I was trying to reach out to everybody, and nobody was reaching back to me. The situation got different. Puffy was getting indicted. A lot of things changed. So I decided to leave to avoid this very situation right here. And what he was saying, the situation he was trying to avoid, was being called to testify against Puff. Now, she asked him, were you subpoenaed to come here? Miss Smyser asked him, were you subpoenaed to come here? He said yes. Miss Smyser asked him, do you want to be here today? Jonathan Perez, no. Miss Smyser, have you been granted immunity? Jonathan Perez, yes. Can you be prosecuted if you intentionally lie? Jonathan Perez, yes. So he tells her. Miss Smyser tries to be preemptive because she knows Brian Steele is going to ask him this very question. He tells the government, the United States government, the federal prosecutor, this is their witness to help them secure a conviction of the defendant for 30 years to life. They asked their witness, were you subpoenaed to come here? Yes. Do you want to be here? No. Right? And then he says this. She asks him, how do you feel about Puff? Jonathan Perez, I feel great about Puff. The same way I always felt. Jonathan Perez says that on the stand in court to her face, to the federal prosecutor's face, and he's a prosecution's witness. I feel great about Puff, the same way I've always felt. No, I don't want to be here. I was forced to come here today. I was subpoenaed. So they just getting, I mean, the prosecution is just getting destroyed, man. So they go through all of the things that he had to do. You know, he was Puffy's assistant. He had to clean up the room. We know Puffy's a sexual, you know, he has strange sexual, well, I shouldn't call him strange. Let me take that adjective back. He likes what he likes, right? And Jonathan Perez's job as Puffy's assistant is to go and set the hotel room up, get him food, liquor, clothes, lights, condoms, lubricant, music, honey. Puffy said that honey enhances the man's libido. Then he was going to sex stores and buying clothes for Jane Doe. Jane Doe, under her own volition, Jane Doe, under her own decision making, Jane Doe, under her own choices, under her own behavior, would call and text Jonathan Perez and tell him, please go pick me out some outfits, high heels, lingerie, so that I can look nice for Puffy, dresses. Meaning that she was not forced. Jane Doe was not coerced. Jane Doe was a willing participant. This is another thing that came out in Jonathan Perez's testimony, because Brian Steele is going to ask him. Brian Steele asks him, Brian Steele to Jonathan Perez, was Jane Doe ever hesitant for a hotel night? They called them king nights. Cassie called them freak-offs. With Jane Doe, they were called hotel nights. With Jonathan Perez and Puffy's employees, they're called king nights. Brian Steele, under cross-examination of Jonathan Perez, Puffy's assistant, who is a prosecution's witness, who ends up helping Puff. Brian Steele, Did Jane Doe ever appear hesitant for a hotel night? Never. Did Jane Doe ever appear unhappy after a hotel night? No. Brian Steele, Jonathan Perez, was Jane Doe a willing participant for the hotel nights? Yes. Brian Steele, Jonathan Perez, have you ever seen Puffy hit a woman? No. Have you ever seen Puffy hit anybody? No. Have you ever seen Puffy carry a gun? No. Have you ever seen Puffy with a gun in his bedroom, his closet, his kitchen, anywhere? No. Jonathan Perez, did Puffy have big, huge amounts of drugs, kilos? No, just little small amounts. Jonathan Perez, was Jane Doe a strong, independent, and confident woman? Yes. Jonathan Perez answered yes. How long did you know Jane Doe? For years. This negates the SEX trafficking piece, the fake testimony of Dr. Dawn Hughes that that Cassie and Jane Doe were under some kind of psychological spell of their abuser. These women were willing participants as described through witness testimony of Puffy's personal assistant, who was around Jane Doe for over 3 years. Another thing Brian Steele was able to achieve is that he was able to get Jonathan Perez to say that when Puffy was doing these hotel nights or these king nights or these freak-offs, that this was his personal time, right? That it was not business. Even though Jonathan Perez was an employee of Combs Global and Combs Enterprises, what he was doing for these setting up these hotels, and this was Puffy's personal time. You know, that was key. They also talked about a sex video found on Puffy's laptop or his iPad. And one of the other assistants found it, showed it to Jonathan Perez. Jonathan Perez went and showed it to Puff. They weren't sure how this hotel night video, which showed Jane Doe having sex with another dude with Puffy there, ended up on Puffy's iPad. And Jonathan Perez texts KK and asks her, how did this personal matter, this personal video, end up on Puffy's business iPad? So obviously somebody hacked it and put it over there. Brian Steele, Jonathan Perez, you feel good about Mr. Combs, true? Yes. Mr. Combs is very intelligent, true? Yes. Mr. Combs would have motivational quotes on his mirror, true? Yes. They found, when the Homeland Security searched Puffy's house in Los Angeles, on his nightstands, he had a big bed and he had a nightstand on the left and a nightstand on the right. And they found little baggies of ketamine and little baggies of MDMA. And what Brian Steele did magnificently was to say, Jonathan, during the search warrants, you weren't there, right? No. You, Jonathan, and all of Puffy's assistants and Jane Doe had access to Puffy's closet, bathroom, bedroom, master closet. Yes. So what he was indicating and casting doubt is to say that Anybody could have put those drugs in Puffy's nightstands. Jonathan Perez, Brian Steele. Were King Nights personal or work related? Jonathan Perez, personal. Jonathan Perez, do you think Puffy's drug habit was a personal habit or business? Jonathan Perez, it was personal. It had nothing to do with business. Then Brian Steele asked Jonathan Perez, Jane Doe asked you to go shopping for her, to buy her heels, lingerie, dresses. Was that personal or business? The shopping for Jane Doe, was that personal or business? Jonathan Perez on the stand under oath says that was all personal. So that is Jonathan Perez, who was a government witness for Mrs. Smyser in the Southern District of New York, blew up in U.S. Attorney Smyser's face, just like Brianna Bogelin did. That's 2 in a row for you, Ms. Smyser. You need to leave this alone. You need to do something else, because every witness that you bringing up ends up helping Puff. Podcast was sold. Sean G. I got another video coming up. Peace.